page 2. The artist knows that even though she has created something beautiful, it can be destroyed. Her real and innermost satisfaction is not in the object, but in that thing within her, which penetrates the mystic splendor of beauty itself. So it is with all of our temporary creations. Empires may rise and fall. The vicissitudes of fortune, the comings and goings of human events, the isolated dramas of our own personal experiences, the temporary or more or less permanent friendships in our lives, inevitably must give way to something bigger. Dr. Howard Thurman wrote in The Inward Journey, page 135, "In the midst of all the sounds rising above, all the mingled words, there is a strange voice, but not quite a stranger. We recognize it. It seems to come from every part of us. We wait. We listen. When all is still, we listen now at a deeper level of silence. In soundless movement, there floats up through all the chambers of our being one word: God, God, God. And the answer is the same, filling all the living silence before thy face. God, God, God." Let us speak our affirmation together with conviction. I walk the path of integrity. I listen deeply, aligning with the perfection and wholeness of God, letting the light of God illuminate my path and make straight the way before me. I see a great vision of my life coming into view. "2019, a year dedicated to spirituality in action." Spirituality in action. And this month, integrity. We have been delving into what it means to live an integrous life, to put acts of integrity into the forefront of our lives, to come from that place of integrity or wholeness. It also means the word wholeness, completeness, which is our divine nature. And I love what Howard Thurman said in one of his quotes. It's not this particular one, where he mentioned that when we get into alignment with our divine selves, when we commit to living our highest values, which are the values of our divine selves, love, peace, joy, when we come from that place, there is a release of vitalizing, uplifting, fresh energy that pours into us and into our lives. Isn't that awesome? I mean, that's what happens, right? It's great. So today I'm concluding this whole series by focusing on living our lives in integrity through developing our inner life. And so 3 different areas that I want to address are knowing the truth of our divine magnificence. That's first and foremost, right? Embodying our divine magnificence. That means not just talking about it, but actually being it, breathing it, and examining our unique path of true, lasting happiness. So let's deal with the first one. Knowing the truth of our divine magnificence. I don't know how many of you have been to Greece or to Apollo's Oracle at Delphi. Anybody been there? I haven't, but anybody? Linda? Okay. Well, apparently in the marble there is inscribed the words in Greek, know thyself. Know thyself. And it's to me, it's echoed in the book of John that says, know the truth, and the truth shall, what? All right, good, yeah. So self-knowledge, knowing the truth of our being, is not only something that is on the Greek walls and in the sacred Holy Bible. We find it in all of the ancient traditions and the indigenous cultures. The importance of knowing the truth of our being and the truth of all life. That there is only one life. You know, this is Ernest Holmes. There's only one life. That life is God. That life is perfect, and that life is my life now. Let's say that together. There is only one life. That life is God. That life is perfect, and that life is my life now. Not in the future, not only in the past, but here and now. I mean, it is also in the future, but here, actually, it's here and now. It's a now experience, a here and now experience and awareness. So the thing to notice is what often happens in this culture is that there's a tendency to think that people have problems and you got to fix them, right? This approach is a very different approach. This approach is a knowing of your truth and revealing that. So it's not about fixing, it's about revealing. Okay, it's not about fixing, it's about, okay, it's revealing something that's already there. So Ernest Holmes coined the phrase, healing is revealing the truth. So whenever something heals in our lives, what's happening is the truth of our being, which is that we're whole, perfect, and complete in essence, becomes revealed in our bodies, our minds, our emotions. So the reason why this is true is it goes back to E equals mc squared, the theory of relativity. Everything's energy. Everything's energy and everything is consciousness. And the consciousness that we are molds energy. For those of you who are new, you may have heard this before, but this is not only something that is in all of the spiritual traditions. It may not be said exactly that way, but it's done unto you as you believe is one example of that. And I know Buddha very clearly taught that we become our thoughts, or we are our thoughts and our beliefs. Consciousness, energy, everything is energy, and consciousness, the consciousness that we are, our ability to choose, our ability to focus our attention is what causes energy to turn from wavelengths into particles, to collapse into form. It's pretty awesome and amazing, but I love that quantum science and those who are bridging those two fields of consciousness studies and spirituality are finding common ground. This has been a dream I know was a dream of Ernest Holmes, is the day when science and spirituality could come together and reveal the truth and confirm the truth. And that's happening now. Bruce Lipton's work, to me, is seminal in this, and that he found that the DNA is not a given the way it's expressed. It's dependent on what? It's dependent on something that's on the edges or the outside of the cell, which is the atmosphere of the body, which is determined by our belief structure, by where we focus our attention, by our consciousness. Our consciousness determines what our DNA does, what's activated, what's not activated, and so on. again, it all points to the same truth of our divine magnificence. That we live, move, and have our being in a conscious, awake, aware universe presence that is called God, Spirit, the Great Spirit. This magnificent awareness that is this presence that is omnipresent, present everywhere in its wholeness, in its fullness, in its totality, and therefore right where you are, right where I am, the fullness of this life and this light. So there we go. Is everybody convinced of their divine magnificence? All right, all right. Okay, developing an inner life then is important to discover that. Also, developing our inner life is important for the embodiment of that, so that we move from intellectual discussion to actually being it, embodying that presence that we are in truth. Let's breathe for a moment. The breath is a really powerful modality for embodying that presence. That, I was thinking that's why whenever after we've been through something challenging, it's natural to take a big breath, right? To help bring ourselves back, to that state of awareness of who we are in truth, which is infinite peace and all possibility. So if we want to claim the potential, the full potential of our divine magnificence, then it's important that there be energy flow in us, through us, and as us. That we be conduits, that these body temples that we're inhabiting become conduits of that divine energy. So then this revealing of truth is really about bringing new circuitry, new rewiring of our body temples to those places where maybe it's not flowing as well. It's really that simple. We can do that through a combination of what we call spiritual mind treatment. It's an affirmative form of prayer where we speak the truth. Marianne so beautifully demonstrated that today. When we speak the truth, we actually raise the frequency of our body temple and we allow the energy to flow. When we speak the truth, we more fully embody who we are. When we combine that, though, prayer and breath work and movement, all of these beautiful different modalities that we have available to us and we continue to discover, we are really helping to put our evolutionary process on the fast track. On the fast track. I love that we have these great pioneers like Myrtle Fillmore and Emma Curtis Hopkins and others, Ernest Holmes and Charles Fillmore and so on, who found the power of affirmative prayer, of speaking the truth. That true demonstration of know the truth and the truth shall set you free. You know it in your own mind, but you also, it's important to continue to do that breath work, to do that all of those practices of meditation to ground and root that truth in the body temple. So spiritual mind treatment then is a powerful mover of energy through the body temple, a powerful modality of rooting us in the truth. Ernest Holmes said, "Let us begin to practice the presence of God within us in a very normal, natural, and spontaneous manner, and with utmost simplicity." Everyone who has ever talked to the God within has had a direct answer. Let us see if we cannot learn to renounce our fears and our doubts, all this inward shaking and quaking and apprehension, and let God give us back to ourselves with a capital S as we really are. Yes. So that's embodying our divine nature. We know the truth about our divine nature, then we go about the spiritual practice to embody it. Then finally, I'd like to address this idea of examining our unique path of true, lasting happiness. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." The unexamined life is not worth living. So, of course, the opposite of that would be the examined life is. All right. So, think about it. Think of how this applies in this day and age. Think of the many, and it may be some of us who are plugged into our mobile devices, who have a hard time letting them go, who are plugged into our laptops, into social media, into the news, into drama, into work commitments, all in the hot pursuit of happiness. All in the hot pursuit of happiness. What popped into my mind, I didn't share this with Dan, so he doesn't have a graphic on it, but what popped into my mind is that movie WALL-E. Did anybody see that little animated movie WALL-E? And do you remember all the people sitting at the computers? They were being fed at the computers, but they sat in the computers 24/7. It's like all of humanity was caught sitting in front of computers and they couldn't leave, or they didn't leave, or whatever. Um, this is what it's like, an exaggeration of what can happen to us if we allow ourselves to be caught up in technology to the detriment of developing our inner world. It's the focus is always outward and it's not inward, which is where new creation takes place. New ideas are birthed there. So that development of the inner world means being conscious, awake, and aware of where we are focusing our attention. Because what I found is the more that I meditate, the more I'm aware that when I am looking through the eyes of this body, that I'm looking from the place of my wholeness. And instead of and at times I do, if I get caught up in a drama, we can get focused and caught up in the drama, so-called out there, but it's actually all occurring in here. But the attention is outward and it's not coming from a place of inward wholeness. So it's like being in a trance. It's being in a trance and caught up in the externals. Others are simply on autopilot. And think about a daily routine. This can be autopilot if we're not careful. Getting up and dressing, coffee and breakfast, work, lunch, home, dinner, TV, reading, maybe some family time, getting ready for bed, and then sleep, and then getting up the next day and essentially doing the same thing over and over and over again. This is what happens when we don't give ourselves the time in the silence to examine our lives. What is truly important? What for us uniquely will bring true happiness? What is our path to true happiness? We know happiness comes from within, but we also know that it's an expression that comes from within outward. And the thing is that happens, and many of you may be experiencing this right now, is that when we don't take the time to examine our lives, we may feel a sense of emptiness, meaninglessness, sadness, and suffering. So let me illustrate a couple of people who made a shift in their lives. There's a man by the name of Tom Shadyac, and some of you may know who he is. He lived the Hollywood lifestyle fully and completely, the rich and the famous. He was the director of Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and The Nutty Professor, and others. And yet he reported that he felt empty, even amidst all of this glamour. After a serious cycling accident in 2007, he spent many hours pondering the meaning and the purpose of life. And what he discovered was that he was meant to release the majority of his riches, which was many different mansions, a jet, boats, you name it, all of the stuff, and buy himself a mobile home and a bike, and give the excess to the less fortunate and to causes that he believed in. And also to share his philosophy with the world. So by simplifying his life then, and again, this was his unique path, he said that he felt happier and wealthier than he ever had before. The next person I want to speak about is Yevgeny Pushenko, a Russian who lived in the 1990s, or not lived in the 1990s, in the 1990s, he's still living, in the 1990s, when the Soviet Union was completely a place where the free market could take over, and that people were free to pursue their dreams for the first time. Pushenko decided to build a clothing factory in his hometown of Vladivostok. And soon the business was booming. However, Pushenko, again, felt empty inside. And so what he did is he decided to return to his Orthodox Christian background, which we know had been oppressed by the authorities up until that point in time, but now he felt free to re-engage. And in the process, he discovered, when he went within, when he listened, he discovered that he was meant to be a monk. So he met with his friends, handed over the keys to the factory, and pursued his dream. He traveled over 9,000 miles, if you can imagine, by foot, from where he lived to Jerusalem on a pilgrimage, enduring harsh weather, enduring challenges with authorities as he crossed different borders. And yet, when he completed that journey, he was happier than he'd ever been. And he ended up settling in a monastery in Greece. So when we reflect on these two men, what I want to affirm with each of you is that we all have a different calling. It's unique for every one of us. So it is important to not only discover our divine magnificence, to embody that, it's also important to listen, to ask the powerful questions of ourselves, of our divine selves. What's next in my life? What is it that I am to do? What is mine to do? What is mine to be in this world? Because I guarantee you that the calling of each and every one of us, whatever it may be, is that which co-creates this thing called heaven on earth, a world that works for everyone. So I invite us all to just turn within and join me in prayer. You can close your eyes if you'd like. And just simply knowing with our hearts, with the heart of our hearts, that all there is one life, one presence, one source, one power, God, Great Spirit, the infinite almighty, the infinite invisible, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, the divine magnificence, the creative genius of this vast and amazing universe, this cosmos. And we also know we're hearing multiverses, many realms and layers and aspects of life. I know that this one life, which is God, is my life. It is the life of each and every one of us. It is the life of everyone, everywhere. The divine spark is actually a divine illuminated sun within each and every one of us. We are the light of the world. We are the divine magnificence of God showing up. And each one of us, as we follow that path of our heart, are fulfilling over and over and day by day this great call to grow, to expand, to unfold, to evolve into the greatest, most beautiful, radiant life that we can possibly be. I know that as we give ourselves to the silence, as we give ourselves to prayer and to spiritual practice of any kind, that we are giving ourselves to the truth of ourselves, as we know the truth, as we practice the truth, as we embody the truth, as we express our truth on our life path. I know that we are truly free, free at last. And so I celebrate this truth. I give thanks for the fulfillment of this word through the power of universal law in the mind of God that knows exactly how to move this energy and to move it into a state in which we truly know that we are living as the very presence of heaven on earth. And we get to share that with each other. I give my thanks for this truth. I release it. I let it be. And I invite us all to say together, yes, and so it is.